Asia is the largest continent in the world by both land area and population. It covers an area of more than 44 million square kilometers, about 30% of Earth's total land area and 8% of Earth's total surface area. The continent, which has long been home to the majority of the human population, was the site of many of the first civilizations. Its 4.7 billion people constitute roughly 60% of the world's population. Asia shares the land mass of Eurasia with Europe, and of Afro-Eurasia with both Europe and Africa. In general terms, it is bounded on the east by the Pacific Ocean, on the south by the Indian Ocean, and on the north by the Arctic Ocean. The border of Asia with Europe is a historical and cultural construct, as there is no clear physical and geographical separation between them. It is somewhat arbitrary and has moved since its first conception in classical antiquity. The division of Eurasia into two continents reflects east-west cultural, linguistic, and ethnic differences, some of which vary on a spectrum rather than with a sharp dividing line. A commonly accepted division places Asia to the east of the Suez Canal, separating it from Africa, and to the east of the Turkish Straits, the Ural Mountains and Ural River, and to the south of the Caucasus Mountains and the Caspian and Black Seas, separating it from Europe. China and India traded places as the largest economies in the world from 1 to 1800 CE. China was a major economic power for much of recorded history, with the highest GDP per capita until 1500. The Silk Road became the main east-west trading route in the Asian hinterlands, while the Straits of Malacca stood as a major sea route. Asia has exhibited economic dynamism as well as robust population growth during the 20th century, but overall population growth has since fallen. Asia was the birthplace of most of the world's mainstream religions, including Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Jainism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, Christianity, Islam, Sikhism, as well as many other religions. Asia varies greatly across and within its regions with regard to ethnic groups, cultures, environments, economics, historical ties, and government systems. It also has a mix of many different climates, ranging from the equatorial south via the hot deserts in West Asia, temperate areas in the east and the continental center, to vast subarctic and polar areas in Siberia. The boundary between Asia and Africa is the Suez Canal, the Gulf of Suez, the Red Sea, and the Bab el-Mandeb. This makes Egypt a transcontinental country, with the Sinai Peninsula in Asia and the remainder of the country in Africa. The threefold division of the Old World into Africa, Asia, and Europe has been in use since the 6th century BCE, due to Greek geographers such as Anaximander and Hecataeus. Anaximander placed the boundary between Asia and Europe along the Phasis River in Georgia of Caucasus, from its mouth by Poti on the Black Sea coast, through the Surami Pass and along the Kara River to the Caspian Sea, a convention still followed by Herodotus in the 5th century BCE. During the Hellenistic period, this convention was revised, and the boundary between Europe and Asia was now considered to be the Tanis. This is the convention used by Roman-era authors such as Posidonius, Strabo, and Ptolemy. The border between Asia and Europe was historically defined by European academics. The Don River became unsatisfactory to northern Europeans when Peter the Great, king of the Tsardom of Russia, defeating rival claims of Sweden and the Ottoman Empire to the eastern lands, and armed resistance by the tribes of Siberia, synthesized a new Russian empire extending to the Ural Mountains and beyond, founded in 1721. In Sweden, 5 years after Peter's death, in 1730, Philip Johan von Strahlenberg published a new atlas proposing the Ural Mountains as the border of Asia. Tatishchev announced that he had proposed the idea to von Strahlenberg. The latter had suggested the Emba River as the lower boundary. Over the next century, various proposals were made until the Ural River prevailed in the mid-19th century. The border had been moved perforce from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea, into which the Ural River projects. The border between the Black Sea and the Caspian is usually placed along the crest of the Caucasus Mountains, although it is sometimes placed further north. The border between Asia and the region of Oceania is usually placed somewhere in the Indonesia archipelago. The Maluku Islands are often considered to lie on the border of Southeast Asia, with Indonesian New Guinea, to the east of the islands, being wholly part of Oceania. The term Southeast Asia and Oceania, devised in the 19th century, have had several vastly different geographic meanings since their inception. The chief factor in determining which islands of the Indonesian archipelago are Asian has been the location of the colonial possessions of the various empires there, not all European. Lewis and Wigen assert, the narrowing of Southeast Asia to its present boundaries was thus a gradual process. The Bering Strait and Bering Sea separate the land masses of Asia and North America, as well as forming the international boundary between Russia and the United States. This national and continental boundary separates the Diomede Islands in the Bering Strait, with Big Diomede in Russia and Little Diomede in the United States. The Aleutian Islands are an island chain extending westward from the Alaskan Peninsula toward Russia's Komandarsky Islands and Kamchatka Peninsula. Most of them are always associated with North America, except for the westernmost Near Islands group, which is on Asia's continental shelf beyond the North Aleutians Basin and on rare occasions could be associated with Asia, which could then allow the U.S. state of Alaska as well as the United States itself to be considered a transcontinental state. The Aleutian Islands are sometimes associated with Oceania, owing to their status as remote Pacific islands, and their proximity to the Pacific Plate. This is extremely rare, however, due to their non-tropical biogeography, as well as their inhabitants, who have historically been related to indigenous Americans. St. Lawrence Island in the northern Bering Sea belongs to Alaska and may be associated with either continent but is almost always considered part of North America, as with the Rat Islands in the Aleutian chain. At their nearest points, Alaska and Russia are separated by only 4 kilometers. Geographical Asia is a cultural artifact of European conceptions of the world, beginning with the ancient Greeks, being imposed onto other cultures, an imprecise concept causing endemic contention about what it means. Asia does not exactly correspond to the cultural borders of its various types of constituents. From the time of Herodotus, a minority of geographers have rejected the three-continent system on the grounds that there is no substantial physical separation between them. For example, Sir Barry Cunliffe, the emeritus professor of European archaeology at Oxford, argues that Europe has been geographically and culturally merely the western excrescence of the continent of Asia. Geographically, Asia is the major eastern constituent of the continent of Eurasia, with Europe being a northwestern peninsula of the landmass. Asia, Europe, and Africa make up a single continuous landmass Afro-Eurasia except for the Suez Canal and share a common continental shelf. Almost all of Europe and a major part of Asia sit atop the Eurasian plate, adjoined on the south by the Arabian and Indian plate and with the easternmost part of Siberia on the North American plate. Etymology. The term Asia is believed to originate in the Bronze Age place name Asawa, which originally referred only to a portion of northwestern Anatolia. The term appears in Hittite records recounting how a confederation of Asawan states including Troy unsuccessfully rebelled against the Hittite king Tudhaliya I around 1400 BCE. Roughly contemporary Linear B documents contain the term Asawiya, seemingly in reference to captives from the same area. The province of Asia highlighted within the Roman Empire. Herodotus used the term Asia in reference to Anatolia and the territory of the Persian Empire, in contrast to Greece and Egypt. He reports that Greeks assumed that Asia was named after the wife of Prometheus, but that Lydians say it was named after Azes, son of Cotys, who passed the name on to a tribe at Sardis. In Greek mythology, Asia, or Asi, was the name of a nymph or titan goddess of Lydia. The Iliad attributed by the ancient Greeks to Homer mentions two Phrygians in the Trojan War named Asios, that is an adjective meaning Asian, and also a marsh or lowland containing a marsh in Lydia as Alpha Sigma Iota Omicron. The term was later adopted by the Romans, who used it in reference to the province of Asia, located in western Anatolia. One of the first writers to use Asia as a name of the whole continent was Pliny. History. The history of Asia can be seen as the distinct histories of several peripheral coastal regions: East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and West Asia. The coastal periphery was home to some of the world's earliest known civilizations, each of them developing around fertile river valleys. The civilizations in Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley and the Yellow River shared many similarities. These civilizations may well have exchanged technologies and ideas such as mathematics and the wheel. Other innovations, such as writing, seem to have been developed individually in each area. Cities, states, and empires developed in these lowlands. The central steppe region had long been inhabited by horse-mounted nomads who could reach all areas of Asia from the steppes. The earliest postulated expansion out of the steppe is that of the Indo-Europeans, who spread their languages into the Middle East, South Asia, and the borders of China, where the Tocharians resided. The northernmost part of Asia, including much of Siberia, was largely inaccessible to the steppe nomads, owing to the dense forests, climate, and tundra. These areas remained very sparsely populated. The center and the peripheries were mostly kept separated by mountains and deserts. The Caucasus and Himalaya mountains and the Karakum and Gobi deserts formed barriers that the steppe horsemen could cross only with difficulty. While the urban city dwellers were more advanced technologically and socially, in many cases they could do little in a military aspect to defend against the mounted hordes of the steppe. However, the lowlands did not have enough open grasslands to support a large horse-bound force. For this and other reasons, the nomads who conquered states in China, India, and the Middle East often found themselves adapting to the local, more affluent societies. The Islamic Caliphate's defeats of the Byzantine and Persian empires led to West Asia and southern parts of Central Asia and western parts of South Asia under its control during its conquests of the 7th century. The Mongol Empire conquered a large part of Asia in the 13th century, an area extending from China to Europe. Before the Mongol invasion, Song dynasty reportedly had approximately 120 million citizens. The 1300 census which followed the invasion reported roughly 60 million people. The Black Death, one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, is thought to have originated in the arid plains of Central Asia, where it then traveled along the Silk Road. The Russian Empire began to expand into Asia from the 17th century, and would eventually take control of all of Siberia and most of Central Asia by the end of the 19th century. The Ottoman Empire controlled Anatolia, most of the Middle East, North Africa, and the Balkans from the mid-16th century onwards. In the 17th century, the Manchu conquered China and established the Qing dynasty. The Islamic Mughal Empire and the Hindu Maratha Empire controlled much of India in the 16th and 18th centuries respectively. Western European colonization of Asia coincided with the Industrial Revolution in the West and the dethroning of India and China as the world's foremost economies. The British Empire became dominant in South Asia, with large parts of the region first being conquered by British traders before falling under direct British rule. Extreme poverty doubled to over 50% during this era. The Middle East was contested and partitioned by the British and French, while Southeast Asia was carved up between the British, Dutch and French. Various Western powers dominated China in what later became known as the Century of Humiliation, with the British-supported opium trade and later opium wars resulting in China being forced into an unprecedented situation of importing more than it exported. Foreign domination of China was furthered by the Empire of Japan, which controlled most of East Asia and much of Southeast Asia, New Guinea, and the Pacific Islands during this era. Japan's domination was enabled by its rapid rise that had taken place during the Meiji era of the late 19th century, in which it applied industrial knowledge learned from the West and thus overtook the rest of Asia. 58-59. With the end of World War II in 1945 and the wartime ruination of Europe and Imperial Japan, many countries in Asia were able to rapidly free themselves of colonial rule. The independence of India came along with the carving out of a separate nation for the majority of Indian Muslims, which today has become the countries Pakistan and Bangladesh. Some Arab countries took economic advantage of massive oil deposits that were discovered in their territory, becoming globally influential. East Asian nations along with Singapore in Southeast Asia became economically prosperous with high-growth tiger economies, with China regaining its place among the top 2 economies of the world by the 21st century. India has grown significantly because of economic liberalization that started in the 1990s, with extreme poverty now below 20%. Geography. Asia is the largest continent on Earth. It covers 9% of the Earth's total surface area or 30% of its land area, and has the longest coastline, at 62,800 kilometers. Asia is generally defined as comprising the eastern 4/5 of Eurasia. It is located to the east of the Suez Canal and the Ural Mountains, and south of the Caucasus Mountains or the Kuma, Menik Depression and the Caspian and Black Seas. It is bounded on the east by the Pacific Ocean, on the south by the Indian Ocean and on the north by the Arctic Ocean. Asia is subdivided into 49 countries, 5 of them including Georgia, Azerbaijan, Russia, Kazakhstan, and Turkey are transcontinental countries lying partly in Europe. Geographically, Russia is partly in Asia, but is considered a European nation, both culturally and politically. The Gobi Desert is in Mongolia and the Arabian Desert stretches across much of the Middle East. The Yangtze River in China is the longest river in the continent. The Himalayas between Nepal and China is the tallest mountain range in the world. Tropical rainforests stretch across much of southern Asia and coniferous and deciduous forests lie farther north. There are various approaches to the regional division of Asia. The following subdivision into regions is used, among others, by the UN Statistics Agency UNSD. This division of Asia into regions by the United Nations is done solely for statistical reasons and does not imply any assumption about political or other affiliations of countries and territories. These subdivision regions are Siberia in North Asia, Central Asia, West Asia including the Middle East or Near East and the Caucasus, South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia including East Indies and Indochina. Economy. Asia has the largest continental economy in the world by both GDP nominal and PPP values, and is the fastest growing economic region. As of 2023, China is by far the largest economy on the continent, making up nearly half of the continent's economy by GDP nominal. It is followed by Japan, India, South Korea, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, which are all ranked amongst the top 20 largest economies both by nominal and PPP values. Based on Global Office Locations 2011, Asia dominated the office locations with 4 of the top 5 being in Asia: Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, and Seoul. Around 68% of international firms have an office in Hong Kong. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the economy of China had an average annual growth rate of more than 8%. According to economic historian Angus Maddison, India had the world's largest economy during 1000 BCE and 1 CE. India was the largest economy in the world for most of the 2 millennia from the 1st until 19th century, contributing 25% of the world's industrial output. China was the largest and most advanced economy on Earth for much of recorded history and shared the mantle with India. For several decades in the late 20th century, Japan was the largest economy in Asia and second largest of any single nation in the world, after surpassing the Soviet Union measured in net material product in 1990 and Germany in 1968. This ended in 2010 when China overtook Japan to become the world's second largest economy. It is forecasted that India will overtake Japan in terms of nominal GDP by 2027. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Japan's GDP by currency exchange rates was almost as large as that of the rest of Asia combined. In 1995, Japan's economy nearly equaled that of the US as the largest economy in the world for a day, after the Japanese currency reached a record high of 79 yen in comparison of US dollar. Economic growth in Asia since World War II to the 1990s had been concentrated in Japan as well as the four regions of South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore located in the Pacific Rim, known as the Asian Tigers, which are now all considered developed economies, having amongst the highest GDP per capita in Asia. Asia is the largest continent in the world by a considerable margin, and it is rich in natural resources, such as petroleum, forests, fish, water, rice, copper, and silver. Manufacturing in Asia has traditionally been strongest in East and Southeast Asia, particularly in China, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, India, the Philippines, and Singapore. Japan and South Korea continue to dominate in the area of multinational corporations, but increasingly the PRC and India are making significant inroads. Many companies from Europe, North America, South Korea, and Japan have operations in Asia's developing countries to take advantage of its abundant supply of cheap labor and relatively developed infrastructure. According to Citigroup in 2011, 9 of 11 global growth generators countries came from Asia, driven by population and income growth. They are Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia, Iraq, Mongolia, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. Asia has three main financial centers: Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Singapore. Call centers and business process outsourcing are becoming major employers in India and the Philippines due to the availability of a large pool of highly skilled, English-speaking workers. The increased use of outsourcing has assisted the rise of India and the China as financial centers. Due to its large and extremely competitive information technology industry, India has become a major hub for outsourcing. Trade between Asian countries and countries on other continents is largely carried out on the sea routes that are important for Asia. Individual main routes have emerged from this. The main route leads from the Chinese coast south via Hanoi to Jakarta, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur through the Strait of Malacca via the Sri Lankan Colombo to the southern tip of India via Male to East Africa Mombasa, from there to Djibouti, then through the Red Sea over the Suez Canal into Mediterranean, there via Haifa, Istanbul, and Athens to the upper Adriatic to the northern Italian hub of Trieste with its rail connections to Central and Eastern Europe or further to Barcelona and around. Spain and France to the European northern ports. A far smaller part of the goods traffic runs via South Africa to Europe. A particularly significant part of the Asian goods traffic is carried out across the Pacific towards Los Angeles and Long Beach. In contrast to the sea routes, the Silk Road via the land route to Europe is on the one hand still under construction and on the other hand is much smaller in terms of scope. Intra-Asian trade, including sea trade, is growing rapidly. In 2010, Asia had 3.3 million millionaires, people with net worth over US 1 million excluding their homes, slightly below North America with 3.4 million millionaires. In 2011, Asia topped Europe in number of millionaires. Citigroup in the Wealth Report 2012 stated that Asian centimillionaire overtook North America's wealth for the first time as the world's economic center of gravity continued moving east. At the end of 2011, there were 18,000 Asian people mainly in Southeast Asia, China, and Japan who have at least 100 million in disposable assets, while North America with 17,000 people and Western Europe with 14,000 people. Demographics. East Asia had by far the strongest overall Human Development Index improvement of any region in the world, nearly doubling average HDI attainment over the past 40 years, according to the report's analysis of health, education, and income data. China, the second highest achiever in the world in terms of HDI improvement since 1970, is the only country on the top 10 movers list due to income rather than health or education achievements. Its per capita income increased a stunning 21-fold over the last 4 decades, also lifting hundreds of millions out of income poverty. Yet it was not among the region's top performers in improving school enrollment and life expectancy. Nepal, a South Asian country, emerges as one of the world's fastest movers since 1970 mainly due to health and education achievements. Its present life expectancy is 25 years longer than in the 1970s. More than 4 of every 5 children of school age in Nepal now attend primary school, compared to just 1 in 5 40 years ago. Hong Kong ranked highest among the countries grouped on the HDI. Number 7 in the world, which is in the very high human development category, followed by Singapore, Japan, and South Korea. In this category, Afghanistan ranked lowest amongst Asian countries out of the 169 countries assessed. Languages. Asia is home to several language families and many language isolates. Most Asian countries have more than one language that is natively spoken. For instance, according to Ethnology, more than 700 languages are spoken in Indonesia, more than 400 languages spoken in India, and more than 100 are spoken in the Philippines. China has many languages and dialects in different provinces. Religions. Many of the world's major religions have their origins in Asia, including the 5 most practiced in the world excluding irreligion, which are Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Chinese folk religion classified as Confucianism and Taoism, and Buddhism. Asian mythology is complex and diverse. The story of the Great Flood, for example, as presented to Jews in the Hebrew Bible in the narrative of Noah and later to Christians in the Old Testament, and to Muslims in the Quran, is earliest found in Mesopotamian mythology, in the Enuma Elish and Epic of Gilgamesh. Hindu mythology similarly tells about an avatar of Vishnu in the form of a fish who warned Manu of a terrible flood. Ancient Chinese mythology also tells of a great flood spanning generations, one that required the combined efforts of emperors and divinities to control. Abrahamic. The Abrahamic religions including Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Druze faith, and Baha'i faith originated in West Asia. Judaism, the oldest of the Abrahamic faiths, is practiced primarily in Israel, the indigenous homeland and historical birthplace of the Hebrew nation, which today consists both of those Jews who remained in the Middle East and those who returned from diaspora in Europe, North America, and other regions, though various diaspora communities persist worldwide. Jews are the predominant ethnic group in Israel, numbering at about 6.1 million, although the levels of adherence to Jewish religion vary. Outside of Israel there are small ancient Jewish communities in Turkey, Azerbaijan, Iran, India, and Uzbekistan, among many other places. In total, there are 14.4 to 17.5 million Jews alive in the world today, making them one of the smallest Asian minorities, at roughly 0.3 to 0.4% of the total population of the continent. Christianity is a widespread religion in Asia with more than 286 million adherents according to Pew Research Center in 2010, and nearly 364 million according to Britannica Book of the Year 2014. Christians constitute around 12.6% of the total population of Asia. In the Philippines and East Timor, Roman Catholicism is the predominant religion. It was introduced by the Spaniards and the Portuguese, respectively. In Armenia and Georgia, Eastern Orthodoxy is the predominant religion. In the Middle East, such as in the Levant, Anatolia, and Fars, Syriac Christianity and Oriental Orthodoxy are prevalent minority denominations, which are both Eastern Christian sects mainly adhered to Assyrian people or Syriac Christians. Vibrant indigenous minorities in West Asia are adhering to the Eastern Catholic Churches and Eastern Orthodoxy. St. Thomas Christians in India trace their origins to the evangelistic activity of Thomas the Apostle in the 1st century. Significant Christian communities also found in Central Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. Islam, which originated in the Hejaz located in modern-day Saudi Arabia, is the second largest and most widely spread religion in Asia with at least 1 billion Muslims constituting around 23.8% of the total population of Asia. With 12.7% of the world Muslim population, the country currently with the largest Muslim population in the world is Indonesia, followed by Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Iran, and Turkey. Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem are the three holiest cities for Islam in all the world. The Hajj and Umrah attract large numbers of Muslim devotees from all over the world to Mecca and Medina. Iran is the largest Shia country. The Druze faith or Druzism originated in West Asia, is a monotheistic religion based on the teachings of figures like Hamza ibn Ali ibn Ahmad and al-Hakim by Amr Allah, and Greek philosophers such as Plato and Aristotle. The number of Druze people worldwide is around 1 million, about 45% to 50% live in Syria, 35% to 40% live in Lebanon, and less than 10% live in Israel. Recently there has been a growing Druze diaspora. The Baha'i faith originated in Asia, in Iran, and spread from there to the Ottoman Empire, Central Asia, India, and Burma during the lifetime of Baha'u'llah. Since the middle of the 20th century, growth has particularly occurred in other Asian countries, because Baha'i activities in many Muslim countries has been severely suppressed by authorities. Lotus Temple is a big Baha'i temple in India. Almost all Asian religions have philosophical character, and Asian philosophical traditions cover a large spectrum of philosophical thoughts and writings. Indian philosophy includes Hindu philosophy and Buddhist philosophy. They include elements of non-material pursuits, whereas another school of thought from India, Carvaka, preached the enjoyment of the material world. The religions of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism originated in India, South Asia. In East Asia, particularly in China and Japan, Confucianism, Taoism, and Zen Buddhism took shape. As of 2012, Hinduism has around 1.1 billion adherents. The faith represents around 25% of Asia's population and is the largest religion in Asia. However, it is mostly concentrated in South Asia. Over 80% of the populations of both India and Nepal adhere to Hinduism, alongside significant communities in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Bali, Indonesia. Many overseas Indians in countries such as Burma, Singapore, and Malaysia also adhere to Hinduism. The Hindu-Buddhist temple of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the largest religious monument in the world. Buddhism has a great following in mainland Southeast Asia and East Asia. Buddhism is the religion of the majority of the populations of Cambodia, Thailand, Burma, Japan, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Laos, and Mongolia. Taiwan, South Korea, Malaysia, Nepal, Vietnam, China, North Korea, and small communities in India and Bangladesh. The communist-governed countries of China, Vietnam, and North Korea are officially atheist, thus the number of Buddhists and other religious adherents may be underreported. Jainism is found mainly in India and in overseas Indian communities such as the United States and Malaysia. Sikhism is found in northern India and amongst overseas Indian communities in other parts of Asia, especially Southeast Asia. Confucianism is found predominantly in mainland China, South Korea, Taiwan, and in overseas Chinese populations. Taoism is found mainly in mainland China, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Singapore. In many Chinese communities, Taoism is easily syncretized with Mahayana Buddhism, thus exact religious statistics are difficult to obtain and may be understated or overstated. Culture. The culture of Asia is a diverse blend of customs and traditions that have been practiced by the various ethnic groups of the continent for centuries. The continent is divided into 6 geographic subregions: Central Asia, East Asia, North Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and West Asia. These regions are defined by their cultural similarities, including common religions, languages, and ethnicities. West Asia, also known as Southwest Asia or the Middle East, has cultural roots in the ancient civilizations of the Fertile Crescent and Mesopotamia, which gave rise to the Persian, Arab, Ottoman empires, as well as the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These civilizations, which are located in the hilly flanks, are among the oldest in the world, with evidence of farming dating back to around 9000 BCE. Despite the challenges posed by the vast size of the continent and the presence of natural barriers such as deserts and mountain ranges, trade and commerce have helped to create a Pan-Asian culture that is shared across the region. Nobel Prizes. The polymath Rabindranath Tagore, a Bengali poet, dramatist, and writer from Santiniketan, now in West Bengal, India, became in 1913 the first Asian Nobel laureate. He won his Nobel Prize in Literature for notable impact his prose works and poetic thought had on English, French, and other national literatures of Europe and the Americas. He is also the writer of the national anthems of Bangladesh and India. Other Asian writers who won Nobel Prize for Literature include Yasunari Kawabata from Japan in 1968, Kenzaburo Oe from Japan in 1994, Gao Xingjian from China in 2000, Orhan Pamuk from Turkey in 2006, and Mo Yan from China in 2012. Some may consider the American writer, Pearl S. Buck, an honorary Asian Nobel laureate, having spent considerable time in China as the daughter of missionaries, and based many of her novels, namely The Good Earth in 1931 and The Mother in 1933, as well as the biographies of her parents for their time in China, The Exile, and Fighting Angel, all of which earned her the Literature Prize in 1938. Also, Mother Teresa of India and Shirin Ebadi of Iran were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their significant and pioneering efforts for democracy and human rights, especially for the rights of women and children. Ebadi is the first Iranian and the first Muslim woman to receive the prize. Another Nobel Peace Prize winner is Aung San Suu Kyi from Burma for her peaceful and nonviolent struggle under a military dictatorship in Burma. She is a nonviolent pro-democracy activist and leader of the National League for Democracy in Burma and a noted prisoner of conscience. She is a Buddhist and was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991. Chinese dissident Liu Xiaobo was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his long and nonviolent struggle for fundamental human rights in China on October 8, 2010. He is the first Chinese citizen to be awarded a Nobel Prize of any kind while residing in China. In 2014, Kailash Satyarthi from India and Malala Yousafzai from Pakistan were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their struggle against the suppression of children and young people and for the right of all children to education. Sir C. V. Raman is the first Asian to get a Nobel Prize in Sciences. He won the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on the scattering of light and for the discovery of the effect named after him. Japan has won the most Nobel Prizes of any Asian nation with 24, followed by India, which has won 13. Amartya Sen, born at November 3, 1933, is an Indian economist who was awarded the 1998 Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences for his contributions to welfare economics and social choice theory, and for his interest in the problems of society's poorest members. Other Asian Nobel Prize winners include Subramanian Chandrasekhar, Abdus Salam, Robert Aumann, Menachem Begin, Aaron Ciechanover, Avram Hershko, Daniel Kahneman, Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Rabin, Ada Yonath, Yasser Arafat, Jose Ramos Horta, and Bishop Carlos Felipe Ximenes Belo of Timor-Leste, Kim Dae-jung, and 13 Japanese scientists. Most of the said awardees are from Japan and Israel except for Chandrasekhar and Raman from India, Abdus Salam from Pakistan, Arafat from Palestinian territories, Kim from South Korea, and Horta and Belo from Timor-Leste. In 2006, Muhammad Yunus of Bangladesh was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for the establishment of Grameen Bank, a community development bank that lends money to poor people, especially women. He is known for the concept of microcredit, which allows poor and destitute people to borrow money. The borrowers pay back money within the specified period and defaulting is very low. The Dalai Lama received the Nobel Peace Prize, in Oslo, Norway in 1989.